The movie begins with Mason telling us his story. He says that throughout his life, he wanted to help and protect people, so he decided to become a lawyer. However, after some time, he didn't feel fulfilled in that career, so he decided to join the military. Despite it being a tough and dangerous job, he enjoyed it immensely and finally felt true happiness. Later, he married a woman named Jenny, and they had a daughter named Casey. His life was going well until one day, during a mission with his team to assassinate a man named Juan, the dictator of the country of New Caledonia, they were ambushed. Their helicopter crashed in the forest, and unfortunately, many of Mason's comrades died. After this incident, Mason decided to resign and return to his old job as a lawyer. However, it was clear that he was depressed and unhappy with his work. One day, Mason wakes up, greets his wife and daughter, and takes his daughter to school in the car. His daughter tells him that a boy at school has a crush on her and keeps bothering her during recess. Mason advises her to hit the boy if he tries to bother her again. After dropping her off, Mason heads to his law office, where he meets with a client who wants to sue a telecommunications company for scamming him. After the client leaves, Mason sits alone, thinking about his professional future. He feels sad because he's earning much less than he did during his military days. Suddenly, an old friend named Earl walks in. They greet each other warmly as they haven't seen each other since the incident. Earl asks Mason to come with him for an important errand. They arrive at a private security company, and Earl explains that he founded the company 7 years ago, gathering skilled soldiers and officers from across America. The company has since expanded to Europe, Asia, and South America, earning millions annually. Earl then asks Mason to work with him, as he was one of the most skilled soldiers in their team. Mason initially refuses, still traumatized by the last mission, but Earl insists that he only needs him for one mission and won't ask for anything else afterward. He explains that the mission is to protect a journalist named Claire, who is set to interview President Juan. Mason is shocked to hear Juan's name, as he was responsible for the death of half his team. Earl tempts him with money, offering $200,000 for the mission. Mason eventually agrees, as he needs the money. Later, Mason returns to his office and watches videos of Claire to understand her personality better. Afterward, he picks up his daughter from school and finds his wife standing with her, looking angry. When they get home, his wife argues with him because their daughter hit a boy at school. She scolds Mason, saying the boy is the son of a prominent lawyer, and criticizes Mason for being a failed lawyer who encourages their daughter to act violently. Mason becomes frustrated with her words and decides to go back to working with Earl. Jenny argues with him, completely opposed to the idea, but Mason reassures her that the mission will be easy since he'll be working for a security company. Jenny becomes even more upset and tells him to do whatever he wants. The next day, Mason meets Claire. At first, she mistakes him for a fan and signs an autograph for him, but he explains that he's her new bodyguard. She tells him he's late for their appointment, and they head to the car and then to the airport. On the plane, Mason watches more videos of Claire to learn more about her. Claire interrupts him, saying he won't find any useful information about her. Mason asks her why she chose to interview Juan specifically. She explains that New Caledonia has the largest oil and natural gas fields in the world, but the people don't benefit from them because their president is a dictator. She decided to interview him to understand his personality better and reveal the truth to the world. After that, they arrive in New Caledonia. Juan comes to greet Claire, takes a selfie with her to post for his followers, and Claire realizes that he's a very trivial and not at all terrifying person, unlike what people say about him. From their conversation, we learn that Claire's friend, Ellie, facilitated this interview with Juan because Ellie and Juan have been friends for a long time. Afterward, they get into the car together, with Mason sitting in the seat behind them. Claire introduces Mason to Juan as her bodyguard, but Juan already knows everything about Mason's life and background. As they drive, they are suddenly ambushed by the military, who blow up one of the escort vehicles. It becomes clear that the military has staged a coup against the president. Suddenly, the soldiers start shooting at the president's car, killing the driver. Quickly, Mason takes the driver's seat, reverses the car, and crashes into one of the military vehicles. Another vehicle approaches, and Mason crashes into it as well. He then tells Claire and Juan to stay in the car while he secures the area. Mason gets out and takes down 3 soldiers, but during the fight, he injures his back and struggles to move. Juan suggests giving him a massage to loosen his back muscles, but Mason warns him not to come near him to avoid any trouble. Juan is impressed by Mason's skills and offers him a position in his army, but Mason reminds him that the military has turned against him and that no one in the country supports him anymore. Mason then retrieves a weapon from the car's trunk, and the 3 of them move toward the forest. There, Mason calls Earl, informs him of the situation, and requests a rescue team as soon as possible. Earl locates their position on the map and tells Mason that there's a safe zone 3 kilometers away. He instructs Mason to head there while he sends the rescue team. During the call, Juan asks to use the phone, but Mason refuses. Juan reveals that he doesn't care whether he lives or dies, which angers Mason. He raises his weapon at Juan, but Claire steps in to stop him, convincing Mason to hand over the phone. Juan calls his nephew, Georgie, and explains what happened, asking for help. However, Georgie shows signs of shock because he's still alive, and it becomes clear that he was the one who planned the coup on orders from powerful figures in the country. Georgie tries to act normal, but Juan is smart and figures out from his tone that he betrayed him. Juan informs Mason and Claire about this revelation. Mason tells Juan that he can't help him further and takes Claire with him as they leave. On the way, Claire argues that they shouldn't have left Juan alone, but Mason admits that he hates the man and doesn't want to protect him because he deserves to die. Claire insists that she needs to interview him because such an opportunity is rare and says the interview will be broadcast elsewhere. Mason, however, ignores her and continues walking. After a while, Mason receives a call from Earl, who assures him not to worry because the rescue team will arrive in exactly 2 minutes via helicopter. Soon, they see a helicopter approaching and prepare to board it. However, they are shocked to find military troops descending from it. Quickly, Mason and Claire start running as the soldiers open fire, shooting bullets and rockets at them. Fortunately, they manage to escape unharmed. After that, they descend and cross the river, reaching the other side of the forest. Mason uses his weapon to fire at the helicopter and manages to bring it down. They then start running and hide among the trees. Mason and Claire get separated, and Claire, terrified, keeps calling for Mason but can't find him. Suddenly, she sees a soldier approaching her. She quickly hides behind a tree, but the soldier spots her and moves closer to kill her. At that moment, Mason appears, attacks the soldier, and strangles him until he's dead. Immediately after, another soldier appears, about to finish them off, but Juan shows up behind him and shoots him with his pistol. Mason thanks Juan for his help. Meanwhile, Georgie and his team arrive at the crashed helicopter, frustrated that they couldn't capture Juan. A high-ranking official in the country, Colonel Korost, also arrives. Mason, while hiding, starts recalling old memories he's been trying to forget. Claire asks about his personal life, and Mason reveals that he's married but his marriage is unstable. Even though he loves his wife deeply, he just doesn't know how to make her happy. Later, Juan takes them to a small village, explaining that this is where he grew up. It's clear that all the villagers love him dearly. Juan meets his close friend Ernesto, who assures him that his men will help Juan escape the country the next day. Afterward, they clean up and change into fresh clothes. Claire then prepares to conduct the interview with Juan. During the interview, Claire asks Juan who orchestrated the coup in the country. Juan explains that many foreign countries are greedy for New Caledonia's mineral wealth, and some of his own ministers are collaborating with these countries to serve their own interests at the expense of the people. Juan refused to let anyone steal from his country, which is why he was labeled a dictator. He picks up a handful of soil and tells Claire that New Caledonia's land is rich in rare earth minerals, which are used globally in manufacturing phones and MRI machines. He explains that many companies around the world want to buy these minerals cheaply, but he refused to cooperate with them. Now, these companies are trying to assassinate him. Juan's current goal is to make New Caledonia the primary source of the world's most valuable minerals and ensure no one, regardless of their position, can exploit his people. Hearing this, Mason reevaluates his opinion of Juan, realizing he might not be as bad as he thought. The media had distorted his image all along. That night, as Mason prepares to sleep, Claire tries to get closer to him, but Mason tells her he loves his wife and can't betray her. The next day, Mason wakes up and prepares to help Juan escape. Juan confronts Mason, asking about his true purpose for being in New Caledonia. Mason is surprised by the question and insists he's there to protect Claire. Juan calls him naive, saying he still hasn't figured out his real reason for being there. Mason then calls Earl, demanding to know why he was sent to New Caledonia, especially on the day the president was supposed to be killed. Earl admits that he sent Mason to assassinate Juan and had arranged for Juan's bodyguard to hand Mason a weapon to kill him in his sleep. Earl swears he didn't know about the coup happening on the same day. Mason asks who wants Juan dead, and Earl reveals that powerful figures in South Africa want him eliminated to exploit New Caledonia's resources. Shocked, Mason ends the call and contacts his wife and daughter, telling them he loves them and will return home soon. He decides to disobey orders and not kill Juan. He informs Claire and Juan that they need to prepare to escape as quickly as possible. At that moment, enemy military vehicles led by Colonel Korost arrive. Juan and his men start running, but the soldiers threaten to kill the villagers one by one if Juan doesn't surrender. Juan decides to turn himself in to save the villagers. Mason and Claire mount horses and escape, with Mason managing to save Juan at the last moment by pulling him onto the horse. They ride off, pursued by the military. Suddenly, Claire falls off her horse and Korost captures her. He reveals that the new president is just a figurehead and they plan to control him to freely exploit the country's resources. Corost admits that he works for the company behind the coup. On the other side, we see Juan and Mason still on the run. Mason notices that Juan always sings whenever they're under attack and asks him why. Juan explains that singing reduces stress, and he likes to keep his spirits high and laugh all the time because nothing is worth being upset over. Mason then tells Juan that he was sent here to kill him and admits that he was about to carry out the assassination. Juan, however, reveals that he had nothing to do with the death of Mason's comrades during their last mission. At the time, Juan was on a boat in the middle of the sea, traveling to Cuba. Mason realizes that his comrades were used as pawns and that he had been unfair to Juan all this time. Juan also explains that he specifically brought Claire from the US to conduct an interview with him and expose the corruption in his country. He knew they would replace him with someone else and wanted to reveal the truth to the people before being removed from power. After a while, the two arrive at a church to rest. Mason calls Earl and tells him the whole truth. Meanwhile, Juan contacts the leader of the opposition party, Lafido, and requests an urgent meeting. The next day, Lafido arrives and they discuss a plan to take down Corost. After finalizing the plan, Mason asks Juan how he has such a good relationship with someone like Lafido, whose main role is to incite the public against the president and organize protests. Juan explains that he pays the opposition party a lot of money to stay on his side while allowing them to hold protests to satisfy the people. This way, he kills two birds with one stone, gaining the support of all sides. Mason is amazed by Juan's intelligence. Later, Mason meets with Corost, who is holding Claire hostage. They refuse to release her unless Juan surrenders. At that moment, Juan appears, accompanied by a large crowd of people. They confront Corost, demanding what they want. Mason seizes the opportunity and escapes with Claire and Juan. After a while, they arrive at the presidential palace through a secret tunnel. Juan enters his office and finds his nephew sitting in his chair, terrified. Juan tells him that he won't harm him and that he forgives him for what he did. He explains that the government will try to kill him, just as they tried with himself, once they get what they want. That's why he needs his nephew's support to reveal the truth to the people and let them know what really happened. Claire turns on her phone and starts recording everything. Georgie, moved by his uncle's words, decides to help him. Suddenly, a traitorous general enters and shoots at Juan, but Georgie quickly kills him. Unfortunately, Georgie is severely injured, but luckily, Juan is wearing a bulletproof vest. Juan rushes to check on his nephew, but Georgie's injuries are fatal. Before dying, Georgie asks for Juan's forgiveness. Shortly after, a group of soldiers enters and demands that Juan surrender. Juan tells them he doesn't care about power or positions and only wants to reveal the truth to the people. He asks for their cooperation for the sake of the country, and they are convinced by his words. However, at that moment, Corost and his men launch an attack. The two sides engage in a fierce battle, and Mason takes his team to escape quickly, hiding in a secret cave. Suddenly, the power goes out, and Mason steps outside, only to find Corost standing in front of him. Mason distracts him while Claire and Juan escape. A brutal fight ensues between Mason and Corost, ending with Mason on the ground and Corost pointing a gun at him, ready to kill him. At that moment, Corost confesses that he was the one who caused the helicopter crash during the last mission and was responsible for the death of Mason's comrades. Mason is shocked and curses him. Suddenly, Claire appears from behind and knocks Corost to the ground. Mason and Claire return to Juan, where the battle between Juan's loyal soldiers and the traitorous army is still ongoing. At that moment, Earl arrives with his men, now aware of the truth, and joins forces with Juan. Together, they manage to secure victory. Later, we see the news covering Juan's story after the truth was revealed, thanks to Claire's videos. Juan holds a press conference with Claire and Mason, thanking everyone who supported him. He announces that he will step down as president and form a transitional government to elect a new leader. During the transition, he decides to invest $5 million in developing hospitals and education to restore the people's rights. Eventually, Mason returns home, and his wife is incredibly proud of him after seeing his actions on TV. Time passes, and one day, we see Mason out for a walk with his family. He receives a message from Juan, who informs him that he has sent a small gift to his bank account. Mason checks his account and is shocked to find $5 million. Overjoyed, Mason decides to take his family on a vacation to celebrate, and the movie ends. This was our movie for today. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. See you next time.